In this video, we're going to look at how to design the charts in your dashboard layout. So if we go to the Setup tab, and we scroll down to the bottom to the dashboard layouts, you can see in this instance we have 3 different layouts. And for this purpose, we're going to go to the Families dashboard layout and we're going to design that. So as you can see, there's a whole lot of default chart information that's put in here, just to let you know that each chart type is based, has a default, each question type has a default chart type. And so if you don't ever go in and design your layout, there will still be a certain design that will appear on your dashboard. However, it is obviously preferable to configure the charts so they look the way that you want them to look. Just in terms of the general features of this particular function, one of the things that's really important to note is at the top is there is a live data and a demo data option. So there's a whole series of demo data that exists in the portal. If you click on that, it allows you to see what the charts will look like. This is particularly useful at the start of a financial year when you might be setting up some new indicators and not sure how you'd like them to be displayed prior to actually getting any data in. So this way, you can at least see what the charts would look like. And as you configure each chart, the chart display will also be changed based on the demo data that's in there. So it's useful when you don't have data or you don't have sufficient data to be meaningful in terms of how this will display. But because we do have this for the Demo DET2 site, we're going to go to live data. Now, another just general function of this particular page is that you can drag and drop. So if you wanted to change around the order of particular features of the charts and the actual dashboard display, you can just drag and drop. And so you can see now that that header has gone down to the bottom. We don't want that there, so we'll put it back up here above cultural safety. Now, if you move the top one down, you have to make sure that you hover the header over the first box. Otherwise, if you were to hover it over there, for instance, it wouldn't sit in the right spot. So make sure that you hover it over that box. So that's how you drag and drop to edit the layout. You can also edit the headers. So maybe we don't want to have relationship-based practice for families. Well, maybe we'll just put families here. That might be our header. Now, that's automatically updated now on the system. We can also add an additional header. So if we wanted to have, we might group here. And so here we'll put back in around relationship-based practice. Oops. It would be good if I could type better, but anyway. So we'll create that one. And so you can now see that relationship-based practice is, again, a header that's there. So you'll now have 2 headers. The first one will be for family survey responses. Then you'll have the relationship-based practice header. Now we're going to go into the graph and configure what it looks like. This is where you can see that it defaults to auto. And what's worth doing for you is just going through each of the different options and playing around with seeing what it actually means as you do that. So I think I can certainly demonstrate a lot of the different options, but the best way for you to actually get familiar with it is to go through and just play around, work out what happens when you click each of the options. So if we're going to have, see here, you can see we've changed it now to a bar chart. We've separated across the series. So this is the series here. And so now we can see that it's separated the axis. So we've combined again now. We've combined the cycle periods. The service categories we've separated across the series. If we separate it across the axis, you can see here, this is the axis. The y-axis is, the vertical axis is the x-axis for a bar chart. So you can see here that we've separated each of the service categories along the axis. If you want to separate the cycle periods across the axis, we can do that. So we can see here September 17 and December 17. So then we might want to actually see the service categories separated along this the series. So now what we can see is the cycle periods here, separated along the axis, and we can also see the service categories along the series. So in this case, we only have MCH and ECEC services. At the moment, what's happening is that the values are being measured. Now, in this case, we've got strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. And it's summarised as an average. This means it doesn't matter how many responses that you get between quarters, it's only calculating it based on the average. We might put it as the median. So in the case of median, that's obviously a different mathematical calculation. So it lines up all of your answers and takes the midpoint. So that kind of gets rid of any very strong outliers that may be sort of skewing your results slightly. So you can see average and median are often quite similar, but in this case, there is actually quite a difference between the average and the median. The agree ratio here is if people agree or strongly agree. The disagree ratio is if people disagree or strongly disagree. And you can see here the percentage for each. The agree or neutral refers to anyone who agrees, strongly agrees, or selects neutral. And disagree, again, anyone who strongly disagrees, disagrees, or neutral. So we're going to go back to the average. And again, just a reminder that we've separated the cycle periods out along the axis, so we can see September 17 compared with December 17. And then we separate the service categories across the series, so that the series refers to what's in the chart itself. Now, if we can also do this, where we can separate across the series, so your measure values can actually be changed as well. And so what we can see here is just a total number of responses. In this case, neutral is obviously the greatest response. And you can see there's 1 strongly agree, 2 agree, 4 disagree, and 2 strongly disagree. Doesn't really look particularly useful, that representation. But again, this one here is, instead of separating in the series as we had previously, this one now separates it along the axis. Okay. So I think it's better to calculate the summary. So in this case, because we've played around with the charts, it switches these previous ones back to just combining together. So just separate them out again the way that you'd like them to be separated out. So, sorry, I'm just going to separate that along the series again. Now over here, we have options. Now these options only appear if the relevant chart types are selected over here. So in this case, we're going to have a filter, and we're going to do it, so we're going to change this slightly because otherwise it probably won't make a heap of sense. So over here, we might do a main filter, which will be by category. And so in this case, we're just doing MCH. Then we might have a twin, which will also be by category, and it's ECEC. And so now what you can see are the results based on, these ones are the MCH results for September 17 and December 17, and these are the ECEC. So you can visually compare how MCH are going compared with ECEC in this particular one. There's a whole heap of different colour types that you can also use, and I'll show those. There's probably some better relevance in a different chart type. But what you can see here is we can actually show the data labels as well. I'm going to take those off. I'm going to now go back and show a different chart. Okay, so you can see how the charts just change automatically based on what it is, how you're displaying it. Now, obviously, this one, when your filters are by category, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So in this one, we're going to combine the periods together. And so what you can see here are the December 17 results. What I'm going to do here now is change this twin filter so that it also goes by period. But in this case, we'll do year to date. And so here you can see that these are the December results and these are the year-to-date results. So if you compare those two visually, you can see that there has actually been an improvement in December because the December results are better than the year-to-date results. So again, it just depends on what is going to be useful for you in how you display it. So if I were to click update for this, then if I went to the dashboard and then looked at the families questions, you'll see that now this dashboard layout is displaying here, if this were to be a meaningful way of displaying that particular data. We'll go back to the setup tab and we'll look at some other ways of displaying the data. So again, go into the design and then configure. So this time we'll look at what a column chart can do. So again, there's heaps of different options and again, recommend just playing around with these to see. So here we can see that we've separated the cycle periods are different colours here, but the service categories are separated out across the axis. If we change that so that we separate the cycle periods along the axis and then the service categories across the series, you can see that each of the service category types has a designated colour and that will appear when you have survey results for each of those. Again, there's the same options around calculating a summary, etc. And so this one, we've pretty well got everything that we really need to. I'm just going to change the colour schemes just to show you. So a 5-point merit scheme means that the colours are based from red through to green. Now, in this case, because the series is service categories, it doesn't really make sense to display that as in that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate the values across the series, and this is where you can actually see that it makes sense. So a 5-point merit scale means that you go from red, because red is the negative option, to green, which is the good option. So obviously, if we're talking about staff supporting your role as a parent, then you would want to have more people strongly agreeing with that because that's a good thing. A 5-point demerit is the opposite. This is where strongly agreeing is actually a negative thing. So in Besta, we probably won't use too many questions that strongly agreeing will be the negative option, but it might, if, for instance, in some bizarre world, your question was, I feel unwelcomed at the service, and they strongly agree, then obviously that would be a problem. So that is when you would have the 5-point demerit as opposed to merit. And 6 points, just a number, it just relates to the fact that there's more colours again, but it still goes in that same order of green being the good option through to red being the bad option. So we'll go the default here, which is just a random series of colours which don't actually have any connotations of good or bad as green and red do. So again, it's just a case of working out what it is that how you would like to display it, what's going to be meaningful for you. If it is separating the months across the axis, then that's how you do that. And then updating. So you can see now that chart has changed. This one, we'll look at a line chart. So you can see here, the line chart is showing a trend, which would be a good trend to have if this was genuine data, because it's obviously trending upwards. So we can separate, you obviously have to separate along the axis, because otherwise it would be 1 point. So if you combine together, what you can do is you can actually combine together the cycle periods, but then it shows you the answer types. So there might be some value in doing that, but more usually you're going to actually be separating along the axis, which is a default for the line chart. In terms of the service categories, it's useful if you can actually separate it across the series. So you can see here, in this instance, MCH didn't actually have any change, whereas ECEC clearly did. There was an improvement. So it's good to be able to see that if you need to. So again, I think it's something that is worth just playing around with, having a look at what it is, how the results change based on what you display here. And then you get to actually see how it will change, based on your data, and what will be a useful way to demonstrate the data that you want to show. So in this case, I'm going to leave that one as the default there. So the last chart type that we're going to look at is a pie chart. Often don't make sense in certain ways, but in certain chart types or question types, it sometimes can look a bit strange. But in this case, let's just have a play around to again see what it is. You can see here you've got the cycle periods. Very difficult to understand what this means. So you can see there it's based on your MCH versus ECEC. But again, what does that actually mean? So if we look here, this is much more meaningful. You can see we're talking about the culture recognised, and you can see there's more than half of the people have disagreed with that. If you wanted to know exactly how many, we could see there were 9 here, 3 in the neutral, 3 agree, and 1 strongly agrees. I'll turn those labels off again, but you can certainly add those in at any time. Maybe you want to separate across the series. So we can see here, this was September, we had a significant number of people disagreeing and neutral. In December, we can see there were some that agreed, some that strongly agreed, some that disagreed, some that were neutral. Again, if you wanted to know how many, we could see by turning on the labels. Now, if we were to do this, we're going to combine together again, and we'll keep the, so you can see here, that's where it's combined all of the results. So it's giving you an average of what people said, but again, not really useful. So we'll do this, we'll do a main filter. The main filter will have no filter, sorry, that will just be the main one here. Then we'll do this one by period. So you can see here that we have 2 charts generated. Again, one's the December quarter and one is the year to date. Just to keep in mind that you cannot actually do it for any other periods. It's either the current period or the year to date. So you can't go back to, say, the September quarter and display, say, September in the first box and then December in the second. It has to be either the current quarter and year to date, or else you need to use a different chart type, which will display that each quarter separately. Sorry, we'll go for the 5-point merit because we know that the strongly agrees are the better options. And then we can update that. And so you have plenty of different options. And it really does depend also on the question type that you have. That can also significantly impact on the way that it is best to display. If we go back to the dashboard now, we can see that each of the dashboard types, sorry, the chart types that we've just put in are now configured and shown on the dashboard. So it seems that the best way of doing this is to pick a chart type that is meaningful and be fairly consistent in using that chart type, because although it's, kind of, there are so many options that you can use, and you can go nuts creating a whole heap of different versions of them, the reality is the more consistent the charts are, the more meaningful it will be for people, because they'll be able to actually see the difference between family input into cultural safety, for instance, as opposed to offered additional supports. So it's really important to think about the way that you're going to display your data and to make sure that it's as meaningful as possible for the partners who will be reviewing the dashboards, and also to help inform the work. So you can actually identify where it is that you are wanting to focus your work, if you can find any particular inadequacies that might need to be addressed, or areas that just might need a little bit of improvement, or that you could show improvement in. So the dashboard setup is obviously really useful for doing that. Just a reminder that you can also print the dashboard layouts. So once you've got your dashboard, if you'd like to print it off to show to people around, showing the trends, etc., then you can certainly do that by clicking on the print and then creating a PDF.